This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Madeline Miller on the show. She has been helping leaders grow, become better leaders and better employees. And we're going to talk a lot about that today and finding out what are some of the skills that we need to be better leaders here in today's society. Anyway, with all that being said, Madeline, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.
So if you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career and how is it that you got into coaching?
Sure. I was a lawyer for several years in Australia, and I like to tell people that in the first 5 years as a lawyer, I moved jobs 5 times. So I think it's safe to say that I never really had an idea exactly of where I wanted to be going. I just knew that I wanted to be doing something great. And so I would try and do lots of different things, hoping that, the new job or the new team would sort of provide that clarity for me. I moved all the way in 2015 to the US. I did my master's in entertainment law at UCLA, got a job working in legal and business affairs as an entertainment lawyer. Then, that culminated with a job as the production attorney on the James Bond franchise. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was wonderful and it was hard, but it was also it looked like I had this really clear career path and direction. But really internally, I was still struggling with this sort of sense of what is my purpose, right? That sort of existential, why am I doing this? And I think for a long time, I focused on sort of external goals and external sort of metrics of success. And I really didn't spend a lot of time looking internally at the things that, would probably provide me with the most satisfaction and maybe even maximize the skills, whatever my skills were, to their, everybody has natural skills, right, to their best effect. I also felt, I'd sort of hit this peak in entertainment law and it was all great, but I had to be honest and say that I personally did not know what it meant to be a leader. I hadn't really experienced great leadership anywhere, and that's not to negatively cast every employer that I've had. I've had some great employers, I've had some really great mentors, and I've had some people that did great things for me. But in terms of me understanding leadership and how that was reflected in myself and how I was showing up, I felt that there was a real lack of guidance. Mm-hmm. And so, with COVID, things had slowed down and we were all working remotely, and I sort of did a little bit of a internal search for, all right, what is this all for? Here you are, it's going along nicely. What do you want the next 10, 20 years of your career to look like? And I was speaking to a friend of mine who I'd actually met when I was working in Cambodia 15 years ago. And she had gone on to teach really interesting subjects at Stanford in conflict resolution, organizational culture, negotiation leadership. And she'd been doing some coaching, and she actually said to me, I think you'd be great at this, and I actually at this point have too many clients. Would you like to try your hand at coaching one of them? And I sort of thought, well, yeah, why not? I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I feel like I've got a lot of insights because I have worked in so many industries and jobs and countries. Let me see how this goes. So I did start coaching somebody at Google. Mm-hmm. And I really, really enjoyed it. I felt that it really helped me become better as a leader myself, because I was trying to help somebody see where their obstacles were and how to get through them. But, in turn, that was encouraging me to do a lot more reading and framing of how I would sort of present that material. It also let me see that there were so many commonalities amongst all of us at work. And so, going even deeper into that and doing sort of further study on my own, I developed a coaching framework that I felt can be useful and applicable for anybody at any stage of their career. But I specifically wanted to target people starting out in their career, like early to mid-career professionals that probably haven't had a lot of access to traditional executive coaching and, possibly like me, weren't really getting the investment from their companies or, feeling like they had good leadership to sort of model their own on. So I really wanted to target the people that are going to be the next generation of leaders. I feel that's really important. I think there's a lot of people doing really great work with senior leaders, and I think that is obviously incredibly valuable because they are currently responsible for creating company culture, etc. But I do see that there is a limitation in only working with people who perhaps need to unlearn a bunch of bad behaviors, and I sort of position my coaching as more preventative. Like, why don't we get in now to start thinking about what you can do individually as a leader to develop your own presence and style, and then carry that forward in your career, so you also don't have to unpack decades of bad behavior, when you're at the very, very top. So that's sort of my coaching framework, how I approach my clients, and there's 3 pillars to it. It's called the AIR framework. So the 3 pillars are alignment, influence, and resilience.
Okay. And how did you come up with those?
So when I really thought hard, I did a lot of what we call deep work. I think that's the popular expression these days. I thought about what are the commonalities across countries, cultures, individuals, different sectors, from having such a sort of, let's say, diverse work experience, because I moved so often. I really think one of the benefits was that I got to see a lot of different people in different kind of organizations. And so I really was like, what are the commonalities? Like, what do you see and people want, feel, and are missing? And also, what did you want? What have you had to develop, and what do you now feel is the secret to sort of your, success? And so the first thing I really thought we all have to start with is alignment, because everybody wants to feel that they are doing something that has purpose or is meaningful to them. Now, actually, I was very interested in how you describe purpose in your TED Talk that I was watching earlier this week. Mm-hmm. Purpose is not, it doesn't always need to mean altruism, right? It's not like we all have to be out there solving climate change. It's not necessarily your political values or anything like that. Purpose is feeling part of something that means something to you, whether it's a great team. I think you used your example of making things easier or making life easier or making things better. If you were involved with something that you can kind of see what the end goal is, that can make your day-to-day work that might be more monotonous more interesting to you, because you sort of know why you're there, and that gives you value. So I think the alignment for me was very much connecting your work with some purpose, understanding your personal and professional values, and then sort of thinking about how that meant you wanted to be showing up every day. So when you are in a position of leadership or more seniority, your actions and your words are congruent. Right. So that's what I consider the first pillar of alignment. And that, I saw that everywhere. Everybody is motivated by work that they feel, is purposeful to them. And everybody wants that at the end of the day.
Yeah. Everybody wants something. They want to feel like they're involved, that their, job matters or what they're doing matters.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be a, what I call the capital P purpose. It doesn't have to be saving the rainforest or something like that.
Yeah.
But just that you're making a difference of where you're at, and you'll be missed if you're gone.
Yeah, and that you are getting rewarded or recognized, or you're having impact or influence, so that's sort of purpose needs to, I think there's this really interesting article I read recently in Forbes, and it talks about burnout, the prevalence of burnout at work, and it specifically targets what they call misalignment burnout. And it's when people at work are consistently working or performing in roles that are not aligned with a sense of purpose, right, and their values. And that is leading to increased rates of burnout, particularly amongst younger Gen Zs. So, alignment cannot be, in my mind, underestimated, and it's the foundation of how we then build our careers and our leadership. So that's how I came up with alignment. And then the sort of second pillar, which is influence, is really, it's tied to alignment. So like everybody wants to feel that they are recognized for the work they do and that they have some impact, right? And that they can build out influence. And sometimes that's, they need to chase that, they need to be able to like extract that from their managers and their bosses. Sometimes they need to be working on, well, actually all the time, they need to be working on their own interpersonal skills to build influence. We're not born being good at conflict, but conflict is everywhere. So we have to learn the interpersonal skills to manage conflict effectively. Similarly, if you look at Gallup, they've got the 7 universal behaviors of great leaders. Literally all of those require good and effective communication skills. So every single person, to build out influence, develop respect at work, feel like they're making an impact, needs to be working on their communication skills. So that's the second pillar of my framework. And I will work with people sort of where they're at. Like if they have a tendency towards people pleasing, we will work through that. If they are perfectionists, we will work through that. If they, are completely avoidant, we will work through that. So like I will tailor it to their particular, strengths/weaknesses. But at the end of the day, it's all geared towards the same goal, which is building out influence for work. And these are all essential characteristics, obviously, of being a great leader, because leaders need to influence, they need to inspire, they need to motivate. And then the third pillar, which is resilience, is really a sort of overarching thing that we all need to develop in our careers and probably our lives. But I'm not interested in the sort of more commonly held notions of resilience as kind of like grit and pain and struggle and suffering. I think that we're always going to have obstacles and setbacks in whatever we do, particularly if we are going out there to take risks and put ourselves out there, make bold decisions. But the trick is like forming a really healthy emotional resilience that will allow us to bend but not break. And I think that if you are doing all this that's why I kind of label it the third pillar, because ideally you're working through the alignment piece, so you're getting a greater sort of sense of who you are and how you'll be showing up. Then you're working on the skills that you might need a little bit more work in to become that person. Resilience is like take all that self-awareness and develop a really good decision-making framework, which all leaders need to do, and you'll be able to roll with the punches a lot more, right? And you'll be able to make bold decisions. You'll be able to sort of bounce back from failures. You'll be able to have the difficult conversations. Like you will become a much more centered and grounded and strong person that can then go on, make, take risks and make different decisions, change a job, whatever that might be. So the AIR framework is sort of like, I call it breathing new air into your career, because ultimately I'm interested in people feeling great wherever they're working now, but I'm trying to set them up with sort of a model and strategies that they can take anywhere. So if they want to shift careers or shift roles, they can continue to be building out their leadership presence in whatever they do.
So let's focus in a little bit on resilience, because that's one of the things that I've been trying to, I know this is more about leadership, but I've been trying to get my kids more resilient and focusing on them. How is it that you go about coaching someone to help build resilience? Because I feel like it's something that maybe some people have and some people don't, but I know you can learn it, but how?
So I mean, it's not like a one size fits all approach. Like here, just learn this thing and you can now be resilient. As you know, like it's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
But I think and there's a couple of ways I could answer this. I think one of the key things to becoming more resilient is building self-trust, right? And to build self-trust, and this might be a bit complex for children. I'm trying to think how I would teach it to a child, but I think one of the things, I just gave a talk on this to a women's group I was traveling in Asia. I was in Malaysia, right? And so there was this group of international women, all kind of entrepreneurs running their businesses. And I positioned this topic and I was really surprised at how much interest there was in it, because the topic was connecting with your intuition in order to make better decisions and self-advocate, right? And to me, that is a core of resilience, because if you are really able to connect with your intuition and know that why you want to be, doing this particular thing or this or pursuing something, you will be better. You will have a better decision-making framework in place. You will be more likely to advocate for yourself in the face of, any sort of negative pushback. And you will therefore, in my opinion, develop healthier resilience, because if, when things fall apart, or if you take that kind of risk and things work out, you'll know that you had your back, right? And to me, that's like, okay, you do that once, tick, right? You do it again and you go, remember last time that worked out? Remember last time I didn't do that? Okay, so I'll try again and I'll do it this way. And then, something comes from it, tick. And you so resilience is like little incremental baby steps to sort of know that you've got yourself.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good way of putting it, because it's one of those things that it's difficult to know how resilient you are until you're faced with something.
Yeah. And, this is where they're all my sort of pillars can interconnect. Because if people are very often acting against interests, right? And they might even know they're acting against the interests. So they're either not connecting with their intuition, or they are and they're ignoring their intuition, right? And they know it doesn't feel good because they're spiraling, they're worrying, they're, like whatever it might be. Now, that is often tied to potentially a sense of people pleasing, right? Like I did, living your career for external validation. Perhaps it's tied to perfectionism, the anxiety that your worth is completely contingent on, your perceived level of success or whatever it might be. So all of these sort of like behavioral components are part, this is why we work on self-awareness. You need to start understanding where they come from and start trying to change them, because that's going to allow you to more greatly either connect or trust your intuition. A lot of the women in that group were like, well, I know this is what I want to be doing, but I just won't do it. So it's like, okay, like why not? There's a lot there to unpack.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those things. Like, what do you figure out whenever someone says, I know this is what I need to do, but I'm having trouble doing it? Like, what is the most, like for me, I think it's fear. I know what I need to do, but I don't want to do it because I'm afraid I might fail, or I'm afraid that I, will disappoint myself.
You need to really, and this is why people work with a coach, right? Because a coach can kind of probe and almost keep you accountable, like kind of start to unpack, like what is that, what is the underlying feeling or emotion? And it might be fear. Okay, fear of what? And then we can go into it. Like fear of, and the more you kind of peel away these layers, the more it sort of becomes revealed. And then when it's sort of truly revealed, like, I don't know, like hypothetically, I'm just thinking like, what are you fearful of? I'm fearful that people won't like me. Okay, and then what? One of my favorite questions is like, and then what? Oh, people don't like me. Then, and you'll get down to like something where you can no longer answer. Like it might be like, then I'll be alone. Okay. So you have an innate fear of being alone. Where does that come from? Okay. What would it mean if you were, you can really start to pull it apart from a number of different directions. And then I would start to set small behavioral experiments at work to try and go against the sort of natural inclination. So like people that don't say no at work, we might, we'll talk through situations where they can't say no because they don't want to disappoint someone. And we'll go, okay, in this, like when this person comes and asks you to do that task again and you don't want to do it this way, let's just start with you saying no then, right? Let's rate how you feel beforehand. Let's rate how you felt afterwards. Let's see how it goes. And very often not much happens. And they go, oh, that wasn't as hard as I thought, right? So then we've got like the first building block to build the next one. At some point, they will experience conflict, but then we're hopefully setting them up to have tools to manage that conflict.
Yeah. So you mentioned saying no. And that's one of the things that I found a lot of young leaders struggle with. They struggle saying no, or, not realizing their limits. And I fell into that trap too. When I was first manager, I wanted to say yes to everything. Every time my boss says, can you guys do this? It was a yes, yes, yes. In reality, I was running my team ragged and we were putting out poor quality work because we were trying to do more than what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Is that a common thing that you see?
Yes, I was going to say, but when you do that, it leads to poor performance, 100%. People, like, this is a huge thing of mine, being able to, like, manage, not just manage expectations, but, like, manage your own workload by saying no. And, you know, people think, oh, you can't just say no. It's true. Like, you can't always just be like, no. You have to sort of find a way to do it in a way that's constructive. But I always say, like, what will happen if you keep taking on more and more and more? You will burn out, or your team will burn out, or you will underdeliver, and then you'll look bad, right? So you have to really think of it sort of holistically, like, what is it's a short-term fix to a long-term problem. Which is ultimately going to affect, like, how you were seen at work. I mean, one of the things that really, really sort of, I guess, propelled me to sort of stop and start saying no was when lawyers, we tend to sort of be both people pleasers and perfectionists. I don't think of myself that way, but we are. We're quite conscientious. I mean, it's a bit of a stereotype, but I think we are. And I think that, I always thought I was like, no, I can say what I want. No. But then I was working at this production company, and we were just, perfect storm of no leaders here, a lot of work coming in, me not really being qualified to do the work, but sort of being the only person there to do it. And so just completely over maybe a 6-month period run to the ground, right? And sort of thinking that, when all of this is over, my bosses or my leaders or managers will see the work I've done and say, oh, thanks, you can take a break now. Or like, that was hard. Now we're going to better resourcing now that we've got some room to come up for air. But that didn't happen. All that happened was they were like, great, she can just take this. Let's just give her more and more and more. And at some point I was like, I have to start saying no, because I can't fit, like, I push myself to my very edge, but now they think that's my new normal.
Right.
Right. So I can't, like, physically I was ill, and I was irritable, and I was like, mirroring the sort of toxic leadership behind. I didn't even like who I was. And it's like, what is it all for?
Yeah. I remember, it was right after I had my second kid, or my wife had the second kid, I guess. I found myself working more than I wanted to. I was in the office later than I wanted to, and that was kind of like the cultural norm of where our company was. And I just went to my boss and said, look, I'm going to leave work between 5 and 5:30 every day. I'm not going to stay any later. And I'm not going to answer my phone or check emails until my kid goes to bed. And once my kids go to bed, then I'll check emails or do whatever I need to do if there's a problem. But between, the end of the day and they go to bed, I'm not going to do anything.
And how did that make you feel when you said that?
I was terrified at first, just to be honest. But after I got it off my chest, I felt like, okay, this is good. I've cleared the air. And he said, well, we'll see how that goes, because I'm probably the first person to ever, tell him that. But it went fine. And not only that, I felt like I was more productive at work because I knew I had a time that I was leaving. It wasn't like I could just procrastinate. I knew I had this deadline. I'm leaving at 5 today, so I got to get this stuff done.
Boundary, and I'm sure you stuck to it and respected what you told him you would do, right? You acted with integrity. You did go back on and have a look, and it worked, right? And if it doesn't work, then you can adjust it or whatever. But so, you asked, what can you tell younger people to do? I think that kind of like the fear of saying something is often worse than the actual outcome of saying something. Yes. And I really try, people come to me all the time with problems, and even if I'm online a lot and social, seeing what people are talking about, younger people at work, and there's a lot of this. Again, I was this person, like fear, anxiety. But there's so many assumptions being made, and like, oh, my boss is not like this, or my boss is like this. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but I'm always like, have you even asked them? Have you suggested this? Have you sort of, my boss hates me. Have you spoken to them? No. It's like, well, you got to do the first thing, right? I'm not promising you it's all going to work out, but you can't sit here and ruminate and obsess and spiral about how bad it is or how bad they're going to react. If you can't, you just have to take that first step and like ask, or, seek the feedback you're so frightened of getting, or, speak up in the meeting that you think they don't value your voice. Just first of all, do the thing, then work it out, right? So you did the thing. You said, I'm not going to do this from this time. And that maybe if you're a younger employee, you could say, I would like to do this. Is this something you can support, right? And perhaps they'll say yes. And then suddenly, like you said, you're like, oh, life's a lot better now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, you're right. The fear of having that conversation was way worse than actually doing it. And I still find myself struggling with that today. Like every time I had to have a difficult conversation, whether it's, about employees' performance or whatever it may be, having that, thinking about the conversation and the fear of going into it is always worse than actually having it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at least once it's been had, you have the information to work from about the next step, right? Like not sort of this naive person that's like, well, if you just talk about it, everything will get sorted out. It's like, no, the people have different needs. They have different personalities. There's always going to be some form of conflict. But I always say, stop making assumptions. Like you've got to get the information to work with first, like about how it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to dealing with, some of the struggles that we as young leaders have, you mentioned, building that influence. A lot of times it's communication. What kind of advice would you have to someone who's new in a leadership role to improve their communication?
I mean, the thing that I always bang on about is active listening. And I feel people go, oh, I do that. I go, okay, let's like run through a conversation you had recently. And, some people are good at certain things, but I think, certain components of listening. But I think a lot of the time people fall into different camps in communications. They're either aggressive, right? Or they're passive, right? Avoidant. Or they're passive aggressive, which is pretty common at work, right?
Yeah.
I would say that very few people are what I would call the healthiest form of communication, which is assertive. And I think that a lot of people don't understand what assertive is. And so I really try and get people, there's a number of different tests we can do and assessments, which I find quite helpful to kind of work out where you fall in the quadrant, right? And, what your natural sort of conflict resolution style is. And then we can kind of go from there to work out like, okay, what do you personally need to work on? Everyone can be a bit of both. I could be a bit aggressive, right? Like if I felt my back was against the wall, I could kind of attack, but really it was just like a lack of confidence, right? So being assertive and like expressing my need and not having the fear that they were going to come back badly or, that stopped me from being assertive. So I defaulted to being aggressive about it. Most people, not most people, but a lot of people will just avoid the conversation altogether or the conflict altogether, which is very passive, but then people don't know what's going on, right? Like how can you lead change, develop people, build relationships, inspire others, all these sort of leadership attributes if you're avoiding difficult conversations? So I think, active listening, there's a really great checklist you can kind of go through to see like in a sort of heated discussion, are you active listening? Are you waiting? Are you just waiting for the other person to finish so you can talk? Or are you actually hearing what they are saying so you can better understand how they view the problem? I work a lot on active listening. I work a lot on, where people fall in the quadrant, if they tend to be more avoidant and passive or if they tend to be more aggressive and competitive, and we kind of work out alternative ways of doing things in the moment or, when they really have a need they want to express. So that's sort of, and honestly, I think that is the core of leadership. It truly is all about communication and how you can communicate.
Yeah, I think I used to think that I was a good active listener because I would try to, people say, oh, you just need to repeat what they say. Well, I thought, well, I can do better than that. I'll try to finish what they're saying. But then I turned out to be just an active interrupter. And I wasn't a very good listener at all because usually what I would say was wrong. I'd make terrible assumptions of what I thought they were going to say. And it turned into be a huge mess. So,
that's very fair. I thought you were going to say, oh, and then they would tell me what's wrong and I'd try and solve it, which is not necessarily the like solution to active listening, because active listening isn't like, oh, now I can fix your problem. It's right. Like, no, now I understand what your problem is and we can maybe collaboratively work towards a new solution.
Yeah. And that's what I'm learning. I try to learn all the time. That's one of the things I'm learning with my wife today is that she doesn't want me to fix her problems. She wants me to understand them. So sometimes I'll have to say, is this something you want me to fix or just to listen? Like,
yeah. Is this just like I need some empathy here, or is this like let's put on our like solution hats? It's kind of the same at work. Like sometimes somebody can just feel like frustrated, right? And like, yeah, there could be some solutions to it, but like sometimes they just need to express how they feel in a safe space. The really, the common, well, I don't know how common it is, but it's becoming more common. The expression now is psychologically safe workplaces.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, where people feel free to express, hopefully in, healthy communicative ways, like how they feel without fear of reprisal. And, work is where we spend most of our time, right? It's where most of our interpersonal relationships exist. So to think that we, do things at home in one way that we wouldn't do at work, no, I mean, it's all just learning to get along with other people, even if you're fully remote, right? At some point, even, if you work in a fully like service delivery thing where you don't have to interact with people all the time, you still got to be delivering to a client. So like working with people is the core of work, no matter what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it right there. It's really about people. A lot of people will say, well, it's business, well, behind every business is a person or a group of people that you're working with.
100%. Like I can't think of a single business that would exist if there weren't people.
Yeah, exactly. So all your business decisions and things that you think about, are going to affect a person in their life, and being able to communicate with them and understand them is extremely important. And going back into listening, one of the things that I found that's really an actionable tip for our listeners out there, whenever you go to a meeting, when you're new to being a leader or a manager, sometimes you feel like you need to dominate, control that meeting and run the meeting and be the most vocal person in there. But in reality, you need to be the last one to speak. You need to be the one listening to everybody else's ideas and creating that safe space, like you said, to share those ideas and be curious. Go in there with a mind of curiosity instead of all the answers.
I love that. I think that's spot on. Like curiosity is the most important thing. Again, it doesn't mean that whatever everybody else wants to say, you're going to change your mind or you're going to just try and please them. But like you've really got to understand what other people's concerns are, feelings are, solutions are, because that is where like innovation is made, right? Like you might, because I was really interesting. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place because it makes me think of all these different things. So there's this thing called the TKI assessment, and it looks at how you fall on the sort of spectrum of 5 different types of sort of conflict, communication styles. And not just for conflict, but, maybe when more in sort of conflict or negotiating. And it's got, so there's like competitive, and we all fall on the spectrum somewhere, right? So there's competitive, collaborative, compromising, avoidant, and I've forgotten the 5th one. Anyway, okay, it doesn't matter so much for my story. When I did it, I was like, I think I'm pretty good, I listen, I know. And I scored really highly. Actually, I scored more high on avoidant than I realized, but I scored really highly on compromise. And I was like, well, compromise is good, right? And then you read through it and it's like, no, compromising can mean that you already go in with a fixed view of what the solution is or what you want, and you just kind of split it down the middle, which I sort of realized isn't always the best, because I'm going in with a fixed mindset, whereas collaboration is going in with an open mindset. So where I actually want to hear what the other person has to say, which may change some of my thinking, but I wouldn't really be changing my thinking. I would kind of just be waiting them to finish. But okay, like what can we get that kind of like splits it down the middle, right? It's not really leading to any innovation. It's just, it's like splitting the difference that already exists. And you're losing the opportunity to be curious, right? And come up with completely new solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Madeline, this has been a great conversation. How can people connect with you online, follow you, or learn more about what you're doing when it comes to coaching, and maybe get some help if they need it?
Yes, people can go to my website, coachingwithmadeline.com, and they can learn more about me, my AIR framework. They can see the coaching programs I offer as well. And they can also follow me on social media. So on Instagram, I'm at Madeline Miller Coaching.
Awesome. And I'll link those two in the show notes at geekleader.com so people can click through and follow you there. Thanks again so much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to, click on their links, and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.